Chapter 6. Ask questions that control the room. Power does not always speak first. Power asks. The one asking questions leads the conversation, always. Questions guide outcomes. Remember that. Questions guide outcomes. Most people walk into a room trying to prove themselves. They talk too much. They explain too much. They defend too quickly. That's weakness disguised as confidence. You don't need to convince. You need to position. When you ask the right question, you shift the frame. You move from being evaluated to being in control. That's the key. You have a choice. You can react, or you can redirect. And redirection begins with a question. In negotiations, the amateur argues price. The professional asks, "What would make this a yes for you?" Feel the difference. One chases approval. The other controls the structure. Questions guide outcomes. In a job interview, weak candidates say, "I'm a hard worker. I'm passionate." Strong candidates ask, "What does success look like in this role in the first 90 days? Now the interviewer is answering. Now you are observing. Now you are leading. You don't need their permission to lead the room. You need composure and strategy. It's not about talking more, it's about asking better. Understand this. The brain responds differently when it must answer a question. A question forces engagement. A statement invites resistance. When you tell someone you're wrong, they defend. When you ask, "Help me understand how you reached that conclusion," they explain. And in explaining, they reveal weaknesses. That's the key. You don't attack, you inquire. Discipline over ego. In personal boundaries, this becomes even more powerful. Someone disrespects your time. Instead of saying, "You're always late, this is ridiculous," you ask, "Is there a reason our agreed time doesn't work for you?" Calm, direct, controlled. Now the burden shifts to them. Questions guide outcomes. In conflict, emotion wants to explode. Impulse wants to dominate. But you already learned, you have a choice. Ask instead of accuse. Is this conversation productive right now? What result are we trying to create here? Do you want to solve this or win this? Notice what happens. Silence. Reflection. Reset. You don't need to convince, you need to position. The question positions you above the chaos. Let's break this down into discipline you can use immediately. First, ask open-ended, outcome-focused questions. Not, "Did you do this?" but, "What was your approach here?" Not, "Why would you do that?" which triggers shame. But, "What led to that decision?" Tone matters. Calm. Steady. You mastered tone before words. Now you master direction before dominance. Second, ask questions that clarify standards. In leadership, what does excellence look like here? What is the measurable outcome? You are not criticizing. You are defining. It's not about aggression. It's about precision. Third, ask questions that expose misalignment. In negotiation, how does this align with what we agreed earlier? In relationships, what expectation are we operating under right now? You are not emotional. You are strategic. Emotion is reaction. Strategy is power. Questions guide outcomes. Now understand something deeper. The person asking questions controls time. When you ask, the other person pauses. They think. They respond. You set the tempo. Slow is strong. When you rush to fill silence, you surrender control. When you let the silence stretch after your question, you build pressure. That's the key.
Ask. Pause. Hold. Let them work for clarity. In interviews, this changes everything. Instead of answering immediately, you can ask, "Before I answer, can you clarify what outcome matters most to you?" Now you tailor your response. Now you avoid guessing. Now you lead. You don't need to convince, you need to position. Position yourself as thoughtful. Position yourself as measured. Position yourself as someone who thinks before speaking. In negotiations, ask calibrated questions. Instead of saying, "That price is too high," ask, "How am I supposed to make this work at that number?" It's calm. It's firm. It forces them to solve the problem. You are no longer defensive. You are directive. Questions guide outcomes. But here's the discipline most people avoid. You must ask without emotional charge. If your question drips with sarcasm, it loses power. If your tone leaks frustration, you surrender hierarchy. You have a choice. It's not about cleverness, it's about composure. It's not about dominance, it's about discipline. When someone challenges you publicly, don't argue. Ask, "What specifically concerns you about this approach?" Now they must articulate. Now vague criticism becomes specific. And specifics can be handled. Vagueness creates chaos. Questions create structure. That's the key. Let's make it practical. From today forward, stop defending instantly. Stop explaining prematurely. Stop reacting emotionally. Instead, build a habit. When tension rises, ask one strategic question before making any statement. 1. That pause alone will transform your presence. In meetings, become known as the person who asks the clarifying question. In relationships, become known as the person who seeks understanding before judgment. In conflict, become known as the person who redirects the energy. You don't need their permission to elevate your standard. You need discipline over impulse. And remember this: he who asks defines the frame. He who defines the frame defines the outcome. Questions guide outcomes. This chapter is not about manipulation. It's about responsibility. When you ask better questions, you create better environments. You reduce noise. You increase clarity. And clarity is power. You are not here to overpower rooms. You are here to stabilize them. You have a choice. Speak to prove, or ask to lead. That's the key. Master this, and conversations stop feeling like battles. They start feeling like architecture. You build them. You shape them. You direct them. You don't need to convince, you need to position. And now you understand how. You've learned to control your tone. You've learned to restrain emotion. Now you've learned to guide with questions. But there is one final layer to conversational power. Because sometimes the strongest move is not asking. It's withholding.